Hi, in this video, I'm going to go over some basic concepts in CorelDRAW. Actually, the CorelDRAW 2019 is what I have installed on my laptop that I'm using. But in the labs at the Altoona campus, we actually have CorelDRAW 2018 loaded onto the two computers that are connected to the laser engraver. So we use the CorelDRAW program a lot for doing things on the laser engraver, so engraving and also vector cutting. Typically in the engineering or in the manufacturing engineering class that I teach, typically for cutting and engraving sheets of acrylic. So at any rate, what I want to do is just go over some of the fundamentals for drawing some basic shapes, adding some text, and just sort of manipulating some of the shapes and things like that, and getting them ready to then be printed or engraved or cut on the laser engravers in the Force Labs. And the laser engravers that we have are epilogue laser engravers. So really, if anyone out there is looking at these, other than students, current students or former students of mine, this should be helpful with using CorelDRAW to do that with a laser engraver. So in order to get a new sheet here, a new project, if you will, you can go to File and New, or there is just a small icon here at the upper left-hand corner that you can left click on, and it will open up Create a New Document. For working on the laser engravers, what I like to do is just set my page size or my document size to be the same size as the width and height that we typically get the 1/8 inch clear acrylic in. So 1/8 inch clear acrylic is what we typically use in the labs. And so the width is, again, 36 inches. The height is 24 inches. And I'm just going to go ahead and select OK to that. You'll see that it opens up my environment here, my work environment. On the left side, this is what's considered the toolbox over here. So as you go along to each of these icons, as you hover over them with your mouse, it will tell you exactly what each of those things are. So you can, select any of these things. You can hover over them and select them to draw simple shapes or to do text or to do fill or whatever it might be. One of the most important ones is the one at the very top here called the pick tool. So if you are in some other command, such as say a rectangle or text or something like that, in order to move that shape or that text box or whatever entity it might be around, you need to go back to the pick tool to be able to do that. So if you continue to use the whatever function you're in to try to move things, it's not really going to work. Well, all that's going to happen is you're going to end up with sort of redrawing. For instance, if you're in the rectangle function, you'll just keep redrawing rectangles. Something else that's helpful aside from hovering over these, and by the way, you also notice that some of these also have little arrow indicators, just indicating that if you click on them, there's actually a flyout menu here too, where you can select different things. So for instance, with the rectangle here, there's several flyouts that you can choose from, and nearly all buttons actually have that. So if you're hunting around for certain tools that someone has told you that are on there and you can't find them, they may be in that flyout menu. Something else that can be helpful to you is if you go into the help menu and you enable something called hints, and you'll see what happens is then I end up with this docker. These little things that pop up over here are called dockers, and they in this case, these are hints for the different things that you can do in CorelDRAW. And so also, if you were to go over here and, for instance, select the rectangle tool, you'll see that it then gives you tips on using each tool. And actually, there's tips, and there's even videos and tutorials and things like that. So it is very helpful. Now the dockers, once they sometimes when you bring up multiples, or sometimes one will replace another. You may say, well, where did it go? If you notice on the right-hand side over here, this docker is called hints, and you'll see that the hints little word is over here, on the right-hand side, but now it's vertically, and that's because that's where these dockers are stowed. So you might end up seeing multiples of these, like with object properties and things like that. And you can close them out. You can either close them out right here, or you can close them out from right here as well. So again, if I want to find those hints, I can go to help and then go to hints, and it will bring those up. One of the most common basic tools is the rectangle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to put some filleted corners on it, and then I'm going to take it and just put some basic text inside of it, and go ahead and set the outside border, or the rectangle shape, to be prepared to actually vector cut on the laser engraver. So when I say vector cut, that means we're gonna make that so that whenever it prints on the laser engraver, that portion of it will be cut, whereas the text will actually be engraved onto the acrylic. So I'm going to start with my rectangle command. I'm just going to left click. Then when I come over here onto my, the area that's representing my piece of acrylic, if I just left click and drag and then let go, you can see, let go of the left mouse key, you can see that I have my rectangular shape here. Up here at the top, because this rectangle is now active, there's a couple different things. One, the hints for it are active, but also all the different functions up here that are or can be associated with it are also active. But I will show you how to go in and find some of these things in some of the menus as well, just in case you want to see those in the menus. So, but up here, the basic, the X and Y here refer to the X and Y coordinate that this is located at. The dimensions that are given here are the actual object size, so the actual width of it and the height of the object. You can lock, you can change that and have the aspect ratio locked so that they change at the same time. So there's a variety of tools up here that you can use. Again, if you want to move this around, you notice right now I'm still in the rectangle tool. So if I left click here and try to drag, well, the only thing that happens is I just draw another rectangle. So what I'm going to do here is let me go ahead and hit the undo button. I'm going to go back to this pick tool. And so when I use the pick tool now, if I left click on this, and you'll see that I have this 4-directional arrow that pops up. And I can now, I can left click in here and just, pan this around. So left click, hold the left mouse button down and just drag it around, and I can pan it to anywhere. One of the differences between 2018 and 2019, so 2019 is what I'm using here, is that I can just hover in the center of this shape and with the pick tool selected and the shape selected, and see that 4-directional arrow. But I won't see that in 2018. So if you're working on this in 2018, you actually have to be on the edge of the part, much like I am right now, where it actually says edge, and then I can just, pan this around in the same way. So, and again, the key here is to be in the pick tool to actually be able to select the shape and be able to move it around and things like that. So I'm gonna just go away from here and just select out into the onto the page area, and then just show you. So now I'm on the page area, and so you can see that now what I see at the top here are the dimensions for my page. So if I go back and select my rectangle, now I can see information that's actually related to that rectangle. And I'm gonna, I wouldn't necessarily do something quite this big, as a demonstration for students in the labs to make something on the laser engraver, but I'm just going to make this, make this rectangle a little bit bigger, just so that we can, easily see it on here. Remember, this is representative of a, 36-inch wide and 24-inch high sheet of acrylic. And so, this to make this shape a little bit bigger for the purposes of the video is what I'm trying to do right now. One of the other things here, we do have a zoom tool, and the zoom tool is pretty handy for, especially if, when I'm going to be working with some of the text later on. But if I left click on the zoom tool, it actually opens up at the top here a variety of different zoom tools. So I can also use the center mouse wheel. So if I zoom in and out with the center mouse wheel, I can go back also to, just to see the full sheet by going to this zoom to page function. So it brings this back. I can also make a window selection around it, around the shape, and be able to see it that way as well. So right now, though, what I'm going to do is just go back to the zoom to page, and then I'm going to make just some minor changes to this rectangle. So one thing, especially with a rectangle or a square, one thing I often tell students to do is if they're going to be cutting something out of this shape, is to round these corners off. So to use a fillet to round them off, so that they're not quite as sharp and pointy, because the acrylic does get quite sharp and this is, it is a laser. So when it's cutting, it is very precise, and it will cut these corners at a, very, very precise, near 90-degree angle. So they are sharp. So what I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back to the pick tool here. A couple of different ways that I can do this. There is an option up here for rounding the corner, but also so that you guys can get, a little more familiar with where things are at in the menus, because this is still very much a menu-driven software package. I'm going to go to Window and then Dockers. So there's a whole other list of Dockers that you can open up here. And then I'm going to go down here to Corners and left click on that, and it brings up this Corners dialog box, or this Corners Docker over here. Notice how it, the hints is still there, so I can still see the hints on the right hand side here, but I also now have this Corners one. And so what I'm going to do, and I had already put in some 2-inch radiuses, and you can see where in blue right now I sort of have this pre-selected. So all I need to do is, I can, and by the way, I can also do, a scallop, or I can do a chamfer. In this case, what I'm going to do is the fillet though, and I'm just going to make a radius of 2 inches. So as soon as I hit the apply button, that's actually going to take and fillet those corners off. And so now, now if I left click away from the shape, it goes to that more the typical black outline rather than the blue that was made whenever I made the changes to the fillet. So the other thing that I want to do here is just if I were doing this, and I have done this as something similar to this as an example to my classes, is to go ahead and just take some text and put it in here so that it has something to engrave. So typically I will do text. Sometimes I'll do pictures. I will probably do another video later on in terms of doing some fundamental work with, like, for instance, a photograph, and a good way to get those to print out on the laser engraver. So, just a warning, I'm an engineer, I'm not an artist, but, there's a few things that I can do here with CorelDRAW to be somewhat artistic with this. But again, this is very, very fundamental for my manufacturing engineering students to be able to use this piece of equipment. Oftentimes students especially in senior project classes will use this for, making project boxes. So you can bend the acrylic for, labeling things on a project, whatever it might be. So the laser engraver is a very handy and widely utilized tool in the curriculum. And so, this is one of the introductory classes where these students get to learn to use it. So I'm going to go and do a text box. So there is a text tool function over here. I'm just going to simply left click on it and just draw myself a small text box. And then inside of here, and you'll see at the top, I can change the font or the font size. The other thing that I can do is if I right click in here and then go all the way down to properties, then I can actually see the properties Docker come up for text. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but let me go ahead and just really increase the font size here, and just, maybe what I'll do is just put my name in here or something like that. And then I can, and then I can just kind of show you some of the things here that you can do with it. So, I have this big text box, and I can resize it if I need to, which if I go ahead and select, get the text box selected there. So again, using the pick tool to make sure that I'm actually in my selection mode. So I can resize that, I can reselect it. When I reselect it, because I've also opened up the properties Docker over here, I have access to, changing things like, the character type, the size of the font. If I go into this next sort of button over, which is the paragraph, I can do things like, center the text horizontally, or justify it in different ways. So I'll set, what I'll do is just go ahead and center the text horizontally, so you can see that moved my name over to the center. If I go over to the next toolbar here, the other thing that I can do is there's also a vertical alignment. So you see, if I hover over this thing and it's got a little fly out on it, and I just left click on it, and so I can center that text in there vertically as well. Something else I can do that's somewhat handy is if I right click in here, I can also do fit text to frame, and so it will sort of fill that, this whole dialog box with my name, or whatever other text that I have in there, without actually changing the, physically changing the the size of the text. In this case, it just sort of automatically changes it so that it fills into the outline that I have here. So if I want to take this thing and move it, and then just sort of center it here, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Though honestly, what I have found the best way to do it is, I can do it like this, where I just sort of left click and drag, and you'll see that there is a little blue center word that pops up. But a lot of times when I look at that, I'm not sure if I'm not grabbing the right place or not. It kind of looks like it's not quite centered. So another way that I have found to do this, if I want to take this text and center it perfectly in this, is to go ahead and just make a window selection around here. So again, if make sure that I'm in this pick tool, and I just make a big window selection around there. And then whenever I do that, if I go to my object menu and go to align and distribute, and what I can do is, in two different steps, I can align the centers of these two things. So the object, the rectangular object, and then the text box, I can align those centers horizontally. And then I can go back in there to the, again, object, align and distribute, and then align centers vertically, and it will move that right into the center of my shape. So now I've got this, this rectangle with my, my name centered right in the, put right in the center of the shape. One of the last things that I need to do here, so if I wanted to take this and actually print it on the either of the laser engravers that are in the Force Labs, or if you're watching this somewhere else and are using CorelDRAW to make something on a laser engraver. Again, we use the Epilogue laser engravers. But if I want to do that, what I need to do is make sure that if I want this rectangular outline to cut out, excuse me, it has to be set such that the printer will know that it is going to be vector cut. In other words, that the laser is actually going to be utilized to cut through the material, whereas the name will just simply be engraved. So the name will not cut all the way through the material. It will be engraved onto the acrylic, and then the outside rectangular, rounded corner rectangle shape will be cut out. The way to do that is if I select my rectangle, And you can see right now, my properties box over here has changed in that, if I have the rectangle selected and I don't have the text selected anymore, now it is the properties that I'm changing are the properties of this rectangle. So in order for me to make this be vector cut, I have to change that rectangle to instead of a 0.5 point or whatever different point or weight of line, I need to change it to this option called hairline. So literally, it's called hairline, and anything that's in hairline from this program and also from other programs. So I believe that I'm not an AutoCAD user, but some people will use AutoCAD to print on the laser engravers. There is a hairline in there too, I believe, that will also be read by the printer as something that needs to be vector cut. So you can see that I changed it over here in the properties box, but I also you can see it since I have this rectangle selected. You can see all of the all of the attributes related to the rectangle display up here, and of course I see the hairline here as well. So I'm almost done with what I would typically do here. If I'm using the laser engravers and I'm using a scrap piece of acrylic that has already had things cut out, what I can do is I can then move this move my shape, my image, whatever it is, around on the acrylic and figure out where I would print on the scrap piece of acrylic that I would load into the machine. The one machine that we have is much newer, and there's actually a camera system in there to help you. The other older Epilogue machine does not have a camera system, so you would have to go in with some tape measure or something, because a lot of the markings inside the machine for the measurements are kind of burned off in places. Go in with the tape measure and figure out where it is you need to move those and move the shape around. To enable moving the shape around, what I typically do is I'll just make a window selection around all of this. So it's just to make a window selection is just a left click, drag the mouse, and then with the left mouse button down, and then just release the left mouse button. So now I have all of this selected. What I can do is I can go into my object menu again. And there's a group function, and I can literally just group these two things together. So when I group these two things together, now when I go to move them around, they move together. So if I need to figure out where on my sheet, my scrap sheet of acrylic, that I need to move this to, then I'm easily able to do that. The one last thing that I usually do, and I highly recommend doing this, is to also change my rulers. So on the laser engraver, the zero, so the origin, essentially the zero in the X and Y direction, is as you're looking into the machine, is at the upper left hand corner. So what I like to do is I like to make my rulers here in my X and Y direction also read zero at this point. So the easiest way to do that is to actually just in the corner here where the two rulers on this page meet, if I left click on it and then drag, you can see that I sort of drag those two lines over. There's not a snap that I have found, but if I can pretty much get it right to that corner, and I bring it over, and it's a left click, drag, and then release, and you can see now my two rulers read zero at this point. So that would agree with my 0 point, or my origin inside of the laser engraver as well. So now if I need to move this around, I can determine, for instance, if I'm on the older laser engraver and I determine the distance over that I need to move this in either the X or the Y direction, I can do that, and then looking in the machine and measuring things out, and then come back over to my to the actual CorelDRAW and move this around to wherever it needs to be. So at this point, I'm actually not at the campus with the laser engravers, but at this point, what I would do is, if I were on campus and could do it, I would go ahead and hit the print, do file and print. if I were, connected to the laser engraver and be able to print this out. So really, though, what I wanted to accomplish here was to show my students and anybody else who wants to use CorelDRAW, the basics of how to use it. And for my current students, this will be enough. This follows along with the handout that I gave you, and it'll certainly be enough to have you started on this and to be able to accomplish the first laser engraver assignment whenever I give that to you. So just wanted to keep that in mind. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'll find it helpful, especially if you're on campus and you're needing to use a laser engraver, whether you're a current student or you're someone who is in a senior design project or something and need a refresher on this, much like the Mastercam videos. So I hope this has been helpful. And again, I'll kind of look into maybe if I want to do another one that addresses utilizing images and things like that. So until then, take care and thank you very much.